There's a family photo that broke the internet last year. Beautiful sunset, happy family on the beach, smiling faces everywhere. But here's what nobody knew when they first saw it. The person who paid for that entire vacation, the $30,000 beach house, all the food, everything wasn't in the picture. I wasn't in the picture. And when the world found out why, everything changed. My name is Sarah, and this is the story of how one family photo exposed the truth about my marriage and cost my ex-husband's family way more than money. I never thought a family vacation photo would be the thing that would finally make me see my marriage and my relationship with my in-laws for what it really was. I mean, who does, right? You go on vacation expecting relaxation, maybe some bonding time, a few nice pictures to post on social media. You don't expect to have your entire life turned upside down because of one photograph. But here I am, sitting in my apartment that I moved into 3 weeks ago, scrolling through thousands of comments from strangers who saw that photo and understood something I had been too blind to see for 5 years. Let me take you back to the beginning, because this story doesn't start with the photo. It starts way before that, with a pattern I should have recognized years ago. My name is Sarah, I'm 32 years old, and up until a month ago, I was married to a man named Derek. We met in college. One of those classic stories where you're partnered up for a group project and somehow end up falling in love over late-night study sessions and too much coffee. Derek was charming, funny, and seemed like everything I wanted in a partner. His family, though, that should have been my first red flag. From the moment I met his mother, Patricia, I could feel this coldness emanating from her. It wasn't anything overt at first, just little things. The way she would look me up and down when I arrived at their house. The subtle comments about my career choice. I'm a social worker, which apparently wasn't impressive enough for her son. The way she would talk about Derek's ex-girlfriend, Amanda, who apparently came from a better family and had better prospects. But I loved Derek, and he assured me his mother would warm up to me eventually. Spoiler alert, she never did. We got married 5 years ago in a beautiful ceremony that my parents largely paid for, because Derek's family, despite their obvious wealth, claimed they were having a tight year financially. I didn't mind at the time. I was just happy to be marrying the man I loved. But looking back now, I can see that was just the beginning of a pattern. After we got married, things with Patricia got worse, not better. She would make comments about my weight, my hair, my clothes, always couched in concern or framed as helpful suggestions. She would drop by our apartment unannounced and rearrange things, saying she was just trying to help me learn how to properly keep a home. She would call Derek constantly, sometimes 3 or 4 times a day, and he would always answer, even if we were in the middle of dinner or watching a movie together. And Derek, God love him, never stood up for me. Whenever I brought it up, he would say I was being too sensitive, that his mother just had a particular way about her, that she meant well. He would tell me I needed to try harder to connect with her, to understand her better. His siblings weren't much better. Derek has 2 sisters, Jennifer and Michelle, and they were carbon copies of their mother. They were polite to my face, but I could always sense this underlying judgment, this feeling that I wasn't quite good enough for their precious brother. They had their own little club, the 3 of them and Patricia, and I was never truly invited in. Derek's father, Richard, was nice enough, but completely checked out. He would smile and nod but never engaged much with anything. I later realized he had probably learned years ago that it was easier to just go along with whatever Patricia wanted than to fight it. Over the years, I tried everything to win them over. I bought thoughtful gifts for birthdays and holidays. I volunteered to host family dinners and spent days preparing elaborate meals. I showed interest in their lives, asked questions, tried to find common ground. Nothing worked. They would accept my gifts with lukewarm thanks, eat my food with barely disguised criticism about the seasoning or presentation, and answer my questions with short, dismissive responses before turning to talk amongst themselves about people and events I knew nothing about. The really crazy thing is that through all of this, I was the one financing a lot of our life. I mentioned I'm a social worker, and while it's not a super high-paying job, I'm good at what I do, and I've worked my way up to a director position at a nonprofit that serves at-risk youth. I make a decent salary, definitely more than Derek, who works in sales and has had a string of jobs that never quite worked out. He's always had an excuse. The company was poorly managed, his boss had it out for him, the market was bad. I believed him and supported us through the lean times, which were frequent. I paid most of our rent, bought most of our groceries, covered our utilities. Derek's paycheck mostly went to his own personal expenses, his car payment, his gym membership, his nights out with friends. I didn't mind supporting us, or at least I told myself I didn't mind. I loved him, and isn't that what you do when you love someone? You support them, you believe in them, you help them through tough times. But his family didn't see it that way. Or maybe they did see it and just didn't care. They still treated me like I was lucky to be part of their family, like I should be grateful that Derek had chosen me. Patricia once actually said to me at a holiday dinner, in front of everyone, that she hoped I realized what a catch Derek was and that I should make sure to take good care of him. I remember sitting there, fork halfway to my mouth, thinking about how I had just paid for the entire meal we were eating, how I had driven 2 hours to their house after working a 10-hour shift, how I had spent my morning off cooking dishes to bring because Patricia had mentioned she was feeling overwhelmed with the preparations. And she was telling me to take care of her son, as if I wasn't already doing everything humanly possible to do exactly that. So that brings us to the vacation. Last summer, Patricia announced that she wanted to do a big family trip for her 65th birthday. She wanted everyone together, all her children and their spouses, at a beach house in the Outer Banks for a full week. It sounded nice in theory, a whole week of family bonding, beautiful beaches, relaxation. The only problem was the cost. Patricia found this gorgeous beach house, and when I say gorgeous, I mean it was incredible. 6 bedrooms, ocean views, a pool, the works. It was also incredibly expensive, $25,000 for the week, not including food, activities, or travel costs. When Patricia announced the plan at a family dinner, I watched everyone's faces carefully. Jennifer and her husband Tom looked excited, but said nothing about the cost. Michelle and her partner Lisa nodded enthusiastically. Richard smiled his usual checked-out smile. And Derek immediately said we were in, without even glancing at me. Later that night, I asked Derek how we were supposed to afford this. He got defensive immediately, saying it was his mother's birthday, and we had to be there, that family was important, that we would figure it out. I suggested maybe we could do a smaller trip, something more affordable, or that maybe the cost could be split among everyone. Derek shut that down immediately. He said his mother had her heart set on this house, that I was being difficult and unsupportive, that this was important to him. So I let it go like I always did. But then a few weeks later, Patricia called me. She never called me directly, so I knew something was up. She told me that she had been thinking about the vacation and realized that it was quite expensive. She said that she knew Derek and I were doing well financially, thanks to my good job, and she wondered if we might be willing to help out with the costs. She made it sound so reasonable, so logical, saying that Jennifer and Tom were saving for a house, and Michelle and Lisa had just gotten married, and were still paying off the wedding. She said Richard's retirement investments hadn't done as well as expected, so they were on a fixed budget. I should have said no. I should have told her that we couldn't afford to subsidize everyone else's vacation. But she had this way of making you feel guilty, of making you feel like you were being selfish if you didn't do what she wanted. And part of me, I'm ashamed to admit this now, but part of me thought that maybe if I did this, if I paid for this vacation, they would finally accept me. They would finally see that I was a valuable part of the family, that I contributed, that I deserved to be there. So I said yes. Patricia was thrilled. She told me I was so generous, so kind, that this meant the world to her. She said the family would never forget this. And I believed her. God, I was so stupid. I told her I would cover the house rental, and I would also take care of the groceries for the week, since we would be cooking most meals at the house. In total, I ended up spending close to $30,000 on this vacation. That was almost half of my savings that I had been building up for years. Derek was thrilled when I told him I had agreed to pay. He hugged me and told me I was amazing, that his family was going to love me for this. He didn't offer to contribute more of his own money. He didn't seem concerned about the financial burden. He was just happy that we were going and that he didn't have to worry about the cost. The weeks leading up to the vacation, I actually felt excited. I thought this was going to be the turning point in my relationship with Derek's family. I imagined us all bonding over morning coffee, taking long walks on the beach together, having meaningful conversations over dinner. I pictured Patricia thanking me for making the trip possible, maybe even apologizing for being cold to me over the years. I pictured his sisters including me in their conversations, laughing with me, treating me like one of them. I bought a new bathing suit, got my hair done, and even splurged on some nice outfits for the trip. I was determined to make the best impression possible. The vacation started off okay. The house was just as beautiful as the photos, right on the beach with stunning views. Everyone seemed to be in good spirits when we all arrived. But it didn't take long for the familiar patterns to emerge. The sleeping arrangements were decided by Patricia, and somehow Derek and I ended up in the smallest room, barely bigger than a closet, while Jennifer and Tom got the master suite and Michelle and Lisa got the room with the best ocean view. When I mentioned to Derek that it seemed a bit unfair since we had paid for the house, he told me not to make waves, that it didn't matter which room we were in. So I let it go. Then there was the cooking. Patricia had created this elaborate meal plan for the week, and somehow I ended up doing most of the cooking, along with most of the cleaning up afterward. Derek would disappear to the beach with his dad and Tom while I was in the kitchen with Patricia, Jennifer, and Michelle, who would supervise more than help, offering suggestions and critiques, but not actually doing much of the work. I spent most of my mornings cooking breakfast for everyone, afternoons preparing lunch, and evenings making dinner. In between, I was trying to clean up, do dishes, wipe down counters, all while everyone else was out enjoying the beach or the pool. When I did manage to get down to the beach, I would arrive to find that they had set up all the chairs and umbrellas in a tight circle that didn't really have room for me. I would drag another chair over and position it slightly outside their circle, and no one would acknowledge that anything was strange about that arrangement. They would all be deep in conversation about family memories I wasn't part of or people I didn't know, and when I tried to contribute to the conversation, I would get polite smiles and then they would pivot back to their own topics. Derek seemed oblivious to all of this. When I would mention to him that I felt left out or that I was doing more than my share of work, he would say I was imagining things, that everyone was having a great time, that I needed to relax and enjoy myself. The worst part was watching how Derek interacted with his family versus how he interacted with me. With them, he was engaged, laughing, affectionate even. He would put his arm around his sisters, joke with his mother, have long conversations with his father. With me, he was distant, distracted, almost annoyed when I tried to get his attention. It was like being married to two different people, the Derek who existed with his family and the Derek who existed with me. By the fourth day of the vacation, I was exhausted and honestly pretty miserable. I had spent thousands of dollars and what was supposed to be my vacation time to essentially be a maid and a cook for people who barely acknowledged my presence. But I kept telling myself it would be worth it, that this was about building relationships, about being part of a family. Then came the photo day. Patricia announced that she wanted to get a professional family photo done on the beach. She had arranged for a photographer to come at sunset, which was apparently the best lighting. Everyone got excited and started talking about what they would wear. I went back to the room to change into one of the nice outfits I had brought specifically for moments like this. I put on a beautiful blue dress that matched the ocean, did my hair and makeup carefully, and it came back out feeling actually pretty good about myself. Everyone was gathered in the living room, and Patricia was giving directions about the photo shoot. She talked about different groupings she wanted, shots of just the siblings, shots of the couples, shots of everyone together. I was standing there with Derek, waiting to hear the plan, when Patricia looked at me and said, "Actually, Sarah, we want this to be just the family. You understand, right? It's a family photo for my birthday." I literally felt like I had been punched in the stomach. I looked at Derek, waiting for him to say something, to defend me, to point out that I was family too, that I was his wife. He avoided my eyes. He actually avoided looking at me and just gave this weak little shrug like there was nothing he could do. The room went quiet. Everyone was looking at me, waiting to see what I would say. I could feel tears starting to burn in my eyes, but I refused to cry in front of them. I managed to say something like, "Oh, okay, sure, no problem," in a voice that definitely sounded like there was a problem. I turned and walked back into the house, went to our tiny room, and sat on the bed trying not to have a complete breakdown. I could hear them all leaving, laughing and chatting as they headed down to the beach for their family photo. Their family photo for the vacation that I had paid for at the house that I had rented, after a week where I had cooked their meals and cleaned up after them. I sat in that room for a long time, and for the first time in 5 years, I let myself really think about my marriage and my relationship with Derek's family. I thought about all the times I had been excluded, all the times my contributions had been dismissed, all the times Derek had failed to stand up for me. I thought about the fact that I had spent $30,000 of my hard-earned money to be treated like I wasn't even worthy of being in a family photograph. And I got angry. Not sad, not hurt, but genuinely, deeply angry. When they all came back from the photo shoot, they were in great spirits, talking about how beautiful the sunset had been, how great the photos were going to turn out. Derek came to find me and asked why I looked upset. I told him exactly why I was upset, that I couldn't believe he had let his mother exclude me from the family photo. He got defensive immediately, saying I was making a big deal out of nothing, that it was just one photo, that his mother was particular about her birthday photos. I asked him if he understood that I had paid for this entire vacation, and he actually had the nerve to say that had nothing to do with the photo, that I shouldn't have offered to pay if I was going to hold it over everyone's heads. We didn't speak much for the rest of the vacation. I stopped cooking and cleaning. I stayed in our room, or went for long walks on the beach by myself. Derek's family seemed barely to notice my absence, and honestly, that hurt more than anything. The fact that I could completely remove myself from the equation and nothing changed for them really drove home how little I mattered in their eyes. When we finally got home, I thought maybe Derek and I would have a real conversation about everything that had happened. But he seemed to think that we would just go back to normal, that I would get over it. He was wrong. I couldn't stop thinking about that photo, about standing in that beautiful dress being told I wasn't family enough to be included. I started going through our finances, really looking at how much I had been contributing versus Derek. I started thinking about all the times over the years I had been excluded or dismissed or made to feel less than. I started realizing that I had been accepting crumbs of affection and respect while giving everything I had. And then the photo went viral. Patricia had posted it to Facebook with a caption about her wonderful birthday vacation with her loving family. One of my coworkers saw it, and she knew I had been on this vacation because I had taken the week off. She sent me a message asking why I wasn't in the photo, saying it seemed weird that the family photo wouldn't include me. I told her the truth about what had happened, about being excluded, about having paid for the entire trip. She was outraged on my behalf. She actually asked if she could share what happened, not the photo itself, but the story of what had happened on Reddit. She said people needed to know about this kind of behavior. I was hesitant at first, but then I thought, why not? Why should I protect people who had treated me so badly? So I said yes, and she posted the story to a popular Reddit forum. I did not expect what happened next. The post exploded. Within hours, it had thousands of upvotes and comments. People were furious on my behalf. They were calling out the narcissism of Patricia, the spinelessness of Derek, the complicity of the siblings. Someone tracked down the original Facebook post with the photo, and people started commenting on it, asking Patricia why she had excluded her daughter-in-law from the family photo, especially when that daughter-in-law had paid for the entire vacation. The post got shared and reshared. It ended up on Twitter, on Instagram, on TikTok. News outlets started picking it up and writing articles about it. My phone was blowing up with notifications. Derek's phone was blowing up with calls from his furious family demanding to know what I had done. Patricia was beside herself. She tried to control the narrative, posting a defensive response on Facebook claiming that I had volunteered to take the photo, that I had wanted to give them their moment as a family. But people weren't buying it. Screenshots were being shared showing that the photographer had taken the photo, so I clearly wasn't behind the camera. People found other photos from the vacation, ones that Derek had posted throughout the week, and I was either not in them or very obviously on the periphery of the group. The internet had decided that Patricia and her family were in the wrong, and they were not letting it go. Derek was furious with me. He came home from work one day and absolutely lost it, yelling at me about how I had embarrassed his family, how I had ruined his mother's reputation, how I had no right to air our private business online. I remember just standing there, calm for the first time in weeks, and asking him if he was more upset about me being excluded and humiliated, or about people finding out that I had been excluded and humiliated. He couldn't answer that question. He just kept yelling about the embarrassment, about how his mother was getting hate messages, about how his sisters were being harassed online. That's when I knew it was over. I looked at the man I had loved for 7 years, had been married to for 5, had supported financially and emotionally through everything, and I realized he had never really seen me as an equal partner. I was a convenience, a source of financial support, someone who made his life easier. But I wasn't someone he valued enough to defend, to stand up for, to include. I told him I wanted a divorce. He was shocked. He actually seemed to think we would get through this, that I would apologize to his family, and we would move on. When I made it clear I was serious, he tried to talk me out of it, suddenly interested in working on our marriage and going to counseling, in making changes. But it was too late. I had seen too clearly what my life had become, and what it would continue to be if I stayed. The divorce was messy, not because of assets, we had much of those, mostly because Derek tried to claim he deserved half of everything since we were married, despite the fact that I had paid for most of our life together. My lawyer shut that down pretty quickly, especially with the documentation I had of all the financial contributions I had made. The internet support was honestly overwhelming. I received thousands of messages from people sharing their own stories of being excluded by in-laws, of being taken advantage of financially, of being in marriages where they felt invisible. So many people told me I had inspired them to stand up for themselves, to set boundaries, to leave situations that weren't serving them. A few people even started a GoFundMe to help me recoup some of the vacation costs, which I eventually shut down because I didn't feel right taking money from strangers, but the gesture alone meant so much to me. It showed me that what I had experienced wasn't normal, wasn't okay, and wasn't something I should have had to tolerate. Patricia and Derek's family went into hiding for a while. Patricia deleted her Facebook account after the harassment got to be too much. Jennifer and Michelle both made their accounts private. Derek changed his phone number. They tried to paint themselves as the victims in all of this, but most people weren't buying it. The general consensus seemed to be that they had treated me terribly and were just upset about facing consequences for their actions. Now, 3 months later, I'm in a new apartment that's smaller than the one Derek and I shared but feels bigger because it's all mine. I'm rebuilding my savings, which took a hit from the vacation and the divorce lawyer fees. I'm going to therapy to work through the years of being made to feel less than and to understand why I tolerated that treatment for so long. I'm reconnecting with friends I had lost touch with because I was always so focused on trying to win over Derek's family. I'm rediscovering hobbies I had put aside. And honestly, I'm happier than I've been in years. The viral photo that was supposed to capture a family moment ended up capturing the truth of my relationship with these people. I wasn't in that photo because I was never really part of that family, no matter how much I tried, no matter how much I sacrificed, no matter how much I paid. And seeing that truth so starkly displayed was painful, but it was also freeing. It forced me to stop making excuses, stop trying to earn something that was never going to be freely given, and start building a life that actually values me. I still think about that week sometimes, about standing in that beach house feeling so small and invisible. But now when I think about it, I also remember walking away, remember choosing myself, remember deciding that I deserved better. That photo didn't just go viral because people love drama, though they definitely do. It went viral because so many people saw themselves in my story. They saw their own dismissive in-laws, their own unsupportive partners, their own experiences of being taken for granted. And somehow, sharing my story gave other people permission to acknowledge their own pain and their own worth. If there's anything positive that came out of this whole nightmare, it's that. It's knowing that by refusing to stay silent about how I was treated, I maybe helped other people find their own courage to demand better for themselves. That photo will always exist on the internet now, a permanent record of the day I learned I deserved to be in the picture, both literally and figuratively. And while I wish I had learned that lesson in a less painful and public way, I'm grateful I learned it at all.